Good evening. We are here with our next guest. I'm so excited. His book it's fascinating and I hope you're going to get a copy of it. Mr. Ben Lytle is a potentialist and invites you to become one as well. The former chair and CEO of Anthem Healthcare with a current market value of more than $100 billion. Ben Lytle is a self made serial entrepreneur, CEO, known for being ahead of the curve. He served on several presidential healthcare commissions, creating something out of nothing, adjusting and thriving during change. Lytle now is a thought leader on the future, and we all need to know it. This fall, or I guess it's now, Ben Lytle has released The Potentialist, your future in the new reality of the next 30 years. And it's a future shock for the 21st century, explaining how every one of us can thrive during these rapid changes by becoming a potentialist. And so, potentialfuture.com. The next 30 years will include a systemic shift in well known institutions such as government, education, religion, news, media, and reliance on employers. Lytle looks at this new future through a lens of opportunity, not anxiety and fear, while emphasizing now is the time to take action for all of us, from single parents to major business CEOs. How we can be prepared, be proactive, and reach our potential as the world shifts and quickly in coming decades. I would really like to get started with him because this is really the future shock for the 21st century, the potentialist, your future in the new reality of the next 30 years. Transformational disruptions are coming. Instead of having your head in the cloud will be in your head, thanks to brain to computer interface, leaving you with just two choices: adapt or be left behind. Ben Lytle lays out what's next and how to get ready for it in his indispensable book, The Potentialist, Your Future in the New Reality of the Next 30 Years. Let's bring him on so we can get this conversation going. Hello, Mr. Lytle. How are you?
Hi, Marcia. It's good to be with you.
Oh, it's good to be with you. This book is very interesting.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I hoped it would be. I was trying to write it for everyone, not just for academics or CEOs, but really for everyone to be able to relate to. So hopefully I achieved that.
I think so. But what's also interesting is what was going on in your head for this book to come out of it?
Well, it started about 2013 or 2014, something late 2013, early 2014, and I was in a period where I had left my last company that my son and I he had founded, and I had assisted him with, and then I was really trying to think really assessing myself. I do that once a year. In January every year, I take a few days and I go, okay, how am I doing? What am I missing? What could I do better? Where could I make a better contribution to my family or to other people? And I really started to realize, from the fact that I have been a futurist my entire life, and I track the trends, I track convergence of trends, and I really started to realize how dramatically the world was going to change in between now and 2050, and that people were not prepared. Even my own family, they're all very smart, very successful people, but it's very hard to wrap your head around where we're going. And I thought, I need to do this. I need to try to bring them up to date. So it started out really as just a white paper for my family. And then the white paper got to be three very large white papers. And so then I decided, okay, well, I need to turn this maybe into a self-published book just for my family. And then along the way, people that I knew in the publishing industry kept saying, this is good stuff. And you're writing it in words that everyday people can grasp. So we think you ought to consider publishing it. And that's how I ended up here. And this is the first of 3 books. There'll be 2, another one next year and another one in 2024, that complete the series of how do you see the future that's coming, adapt to it, and prosper, really succeed in this next 30 years.
And you're moving us through these different chapters in that movement, in that transitioning of coming out of being a leader,
Mm-hmm.
international leader, and having the ability to have the what is it, the 30,000 foot level,
Right.
right?
Yep.
To and it requires that level to and have the ability to be able to foresee what's coming.
You're exactly right, Marcia.
Right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, it is truly a case of not being able to see the forest for the trees, because our daily lives are busy. It's not that people are not super intelligent and that, but it's just that our lives are so busy. We're trying to deal with trees every day. But in order to see where we're going and how it's going to impact us, you have to go up and you have to get a bird's eye view. And that's what I really try to do in the first 88 pages, or about 1/3 of the book. And then the rest of the book says, okay, but what do I do about it? And so I laid out 7 things that if everyone will focus on just trying to be good at those 7 things, you'll be way ahead of the game in the next 30 years.
I need to say this because I had the privilege of meeting Carly Fiorina.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And her quote in here in the chapter. So I go through and I have my little stuff that I do, right? It's a thing. But she says, I believe that technology is the great leveler. Technology permits anybody to play. And in some ways, I think technology, it's not only a great tool for democratization, but it's a great tool for eliminating prejudice and advancing mediocrities. Is that it? How you say that?
Yeah.
Mediocrities.
Meritocracies.
Okay.
Meritocracy.
And so how do you take that and shape it so that lay people can function and understand how they're supposed to track their lives and their businesses?
Well, here's and Carly, that's one of the reasons that I use that quote a lot, because I think she nailed it.
Yeah.
Innovation, if you go back and study the arc of history since the beginning of time, as I've done and many people have done, you're struck by one thing, and that's that it's innovation more than anything else that lifts humanity. Mm-hmm. That's it. It's the magic level, as she said, the magic leveler. And it's a particular kind of innovation, which is called democratizing innovation. And democratizing in this context has nothing to do with democracy. I mean, it does, but it's not. It's the second definition. If you look it up in the dictionary, it's the second definition that matters here. And it means to make what is available to a few, yes, to many, and then to everyone. Mm-hmm. And so a perfect example in history is the printing press. Before the printing press, only the wealthy and the clergy had access to books because they were handmade and they were horribly expensive. And finally, someone, Gutenberg in 1440, I think it was, and about around there, figured out, and it was an enormously expensive investment and very difficult, but he figured out how to print books inexpensively. Well, that democratized them. That made them available to many people, and ultimately now all of us can afford a book. Well, it also, though, the other great thing about democratizing innovations is they trigger others. So the printing press triggered a demand for literacy, and literacy was next democratized. And then literacy, in order to achieve literacy, it created a demand for public education. And so that's the way it works. So the internet's another great democratizing innovation. And so what Carly said there is exactly right. And so what really inspired entrepreneurs are doing right now is they're trying to figure out, how do I take these technologies like a smartphone that virtually anybody can master, and in a few years, everybody in the world is going to have one. And how do I take that and the cloud, the internet, the cloud, and how do I make something that currently only a few people can get, but ultimately everybody can have? How can I do that? And those are the great opportunities of the next 30 years for entrepreneurs.
But in looking at the entrepreneurs in the next 30 years, and I'm looking at in how we deal with this whole democratization, the issue for me is bigger than just that, because the few that may be getting access and have the ability to develop and yield a lot from those little pieces, it also leaves room for millions. The numbers are unconscionable, that do not have that access, do not have the ability to get to the library, because that's free. You can't get there. You can't get on the internet. We have far too many people that in 2022, while we're talking about all of these wonderful things, the reality for me in the communities that I view, we don't have those basics, access to basics. So
I would tell you we will, Marsha. I mean, the entire reason that people are like Amazon and like SpaceX are putting satellites and SpaceLink into the air is because those start to make it very cheap to beam Wi-Fi anywhere. And it will become affordable, and we will reach everyone. We've got about 5.5 people right now that have smartphones and either have cellular access or have Wi-Fi. We'll ultimately get to everybody on the planet because it's in everyone's economic interest to do so. And it's in everyone's interest to make a better world.
Okay, but Ben, will I be alive to see that? And
yes.
here's
no, but
this is real. This is real, Ben, and I need to say that because what you're talking about is future thinking, right? We're thinking about the future and the building.
But a decade, it will be there within a decade.
Okay, so but in that decade, I'm going to go back to what is important to me, and the digital divide is still existing, right?
Right.
And if the technology is the basis for all of this, and we're still talking, I'm going to tell you this because this is really important from a time standpoint. In 1994, I want to say, we created Black Family Technology Awareness Week. That was when Ron Brown was the Secretary of the Department of Commerce, right? And at that time, at NTIA, I know you know what all that means, they gave out grants talking about that. But we're still talking about the digital divide. And the work that I did at Columbia University at the Institute for Learning and Technology and the Institute for Urban and Minority Education had a different story, right? And so here we are now, we're in 2022. That conversation that I had with doing Harlem Renaissance 2001 at Columbia, and 20 years later, we still do not have access. And
True.
So now we're saying another 10, but we got to, but we got to have the conversation.
But it will happen. And I would predict it'll happen within a decade. And I would go a step further, because this is even more important. I think within a decade, all the people that today cannot be reached with a good school, can't afford higher education, will be able to reach it, and they'll be able to reach it at a very affordable price, because these technologies are going to make it possible. And the other major factor that's going on, which is a decline in the birth rates, we're going to need every person we can to be operating at their absolute peak. So we can't let populations fall behind. We'll have to bring them along with us, and it's going to be in everyone's interest too. And so I will again predict to you that within a decade, no more than 15 years, we're going to be able to reach every person on the planet with a high quality education that they can afford or their government can afford.
So in the next 15 years, but in the meantime, what are the steps that communities, school systems, cities can do as we grow? Because this is also the future of employment.
Right.
Right?
And the employers are going to help drive it because they're going to need the workers and they need them wherever they are. And one of the things that's also driving our economics, though. You know, we didn't have the ability to throw up 35 satellites in an hour. That didn't exist in the 90s. And these things, sometimes they can't exist until the technology's there. But I mean,
Right.
look what happened where in the Ukraine was being blocked by its Wi-Fi was being blocked. We threw up the satellites, and guess what? Now they have Wi-Fi. And it was that fast. Well, that's what's going to happen. And again, there's nothing like it being in everyone's interest. And when all the employers need all the workers they can lay their hands on, we're going to make darn sure everybody gets a good education and they're ready for those jobs.
So looking ahead to the new reality, the new world reality, number one, the world will become your stage in the next 3 decades, but it will challenge you to understand who you are and where you stand as everything about you becomes transparent. How do we deal with that new reality individually and collectively?
Well, first of all, just accept that it exists, you know, and you'd think, well, doesn't everybody? And the answer is no.
No.
I mean, every few months, we see a politician's career or a CEO's career go up in flames because they did something on the internet that you wouldn't want a 16-year-old to do. So, so, you know, it starts with, you know, us all recognizing that one little phrase I find really helpful. And I say this to young people all the time, but it's true for everybody. Digits never die.
Did you say digits?
Digits never die. So once you have a digital photo of you and it's on the internet, it is there forever. So if you start by recognizing, okay, my behavior now, you know, we all worry, people, you know, your age, my age, we grew up being taught, pay attention to your reputation. Your reputation for character is what'll carry you through life.
Yes.
And we were very attentive. But we also didn't have somebody following us around with a camera 24 hours a day. So we now have to be much more attentive. And so what I tell, and then of course we have a lot of the social media culture that has encouraged people, and young people are particularly susceptible to this, to be something they're not. And that's an equally an unpleasant mistake. So that whole first chapter is, first of all, be you. Mm-hmm. Be a you that you want to be proud of, and build a record of who you are that you're going to be proud of, and that's going to carry you through your whole life. And if you just think about it that way, then I think it really starts to reshape your view of what you need to do. So character matters now. It's going to be on public. It's going to be for public examination like never before. And so it's a new reality. We have to grow up. That's the way it is.
Mm-hmm. And you actually talk about, and I highlighted the new world reality, right?
Yeah.
And that sweeping societal changes will alter the fabric of daily life and belief systems.
Right.
Is it because of what you see and it's not being censored, or it's being controlled, or what?
No, I think what's going to alter people's views is, and we already know it. All of us are much more wired in today to what's going on in the world than ever before. Now, today it's filtered through news media. Increasingly, we'll see that more by people on the street, and we already see it. I mean, if it weren't for people smuggling out videos, do you think we'd have any idea what's going on in China right now? Absolutely not. Do we think we would know about dissent in Russia? Absolutely not. And so we'll have a different perspective because now we'll be seeing it more and more through the eyes of people like us. And that's going to help change our views. In centuries past, our rulers could very easily convince us that our neighbors were enemies or that the people across the world were monsters. Well, it's not so easy anymore. We see people trying to do a lot, people aspiring for freedom, people aspiring for a decent place to raise their family. And that's going to help us understand. And of course, travel's easier as well. And many more people today travel and experience other cultures. And usually we come back, well, no, they're mostly like us. They're just trying to make their way through life and have a good life and take care of their families.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the skills and mindset for new reality careers.
Mm-hmm.
And as we talk through that, what does that look like? And I'm going to go to what does that look like for people who are being educated in the public system in underserved communities? How do we bring them up to speed in order to be competitive in this new reality?
Well, one of the things that I think that I will absolutely predict will happen is that we are going to stop losing people through failing school systems. We're going to find a way for parents to be able to get their child educated either within that system, but supplementing it or going outside. So I'm just going to predict that's going to happen because the technology makes that absolutely possible today. And it wasn't possible 5 years ago even. So that's one thing. The other is, though, the biggest change that most people today don't really realize and it's been known actually that it's happening for 20 years, is that birth rates are falling worldwide. And most people are shocked when I give a speech on this, and I say, you have to have 2.1 children per every female in a population on average to keep a population flat. Not one single country in the developed world is at 2.1. They're all below.
Why?
So, because for about 35, that they figured out 35 very complex reasons, birth rates have been falling for over 50 years. So even in cultures where today they still have what would be large numbers of children compared to the United States, it's half what it was 15 years ago. It's cost. It's no longer being an agrarian society, so we don't need 5, 6, 8 children to work on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that people tend to have children later in life, and biologically we can't have children very easily. It becomes very dangerous for a woman to have a child after 35, 40 years old. So for a very complex set of reasons, birth rates have been really falling. Now, this is how far they've fallen. In the United States, we're now at 1.7. Now you need 2.1. So without immigration, the population in the United States would be falling. If you take some countries like Italy, Spain, Greece, South Korea, Japan, China, they're basically in population free fall. That means that the people will, in a few generations, will be a tiny minority in their own country if their country doesn't change. So if anybody visits Italy, you can visibly see this. You'll go to small towns, and there'll be entire sections where it'll be barricaded off because no one lives there anymore. Some small towns in Italy will give you a home if you'll go there and take care of it. They'll be glad to give it to you. So, because that's how severe population decline is, it causes rapid consolidation of schools. There's not enough. You can't support schools the same way. So going back, you now have to travel further to school. So that's a huge thing that's occurring. It has negatives, like we just mentioned there. It also creates worker shortages. So today in the United States, we've already witnessed suddenly we don't have enough pilots. We don't have enough nurses. We're 1 million nurses short in the United States, at least.
That's huge.
We have most physician specialties we're not replacing themselves. So suddenly people are finding it's taking 2-3 months to get to see into a specialist. And that's going to get worse before it gets better. But the good side of it is we're going to really value every human life, maybe more than we ever did. And we cannot let people fall behind. So the fact that we've had populations that just weren't able to keep up, the schools weren't good. We cannot allow that to happen anymore. And economically, companies are going to force it to happen. And companies are already responding. There was a Wall Street Journal article, I think, day before yesterday, that reported how many companies are now taking the college degree requirement off many of their jobs because they can't get people with college degrees, and they're really questioning, saying, do we need it to be a college degree? And they're finding a lot of them don't. That's going to create opportunity for people who never had a chance before because those jobs were unavailable.
Right.
So, and that's happening, and it's happening at rocket speed.
So that's really kind of scary because it says that the whole country, and if not just the country, but the world is shrinking, basically, right? And not in yet. Terms, but it's en route based on what you're saying to me. Something's happening, right? And
if it follows this trajectory,
right?
According to the UN, after 2160, the only continent on the world that will still have a growing population is Africa. And it will be by the momentum of the population there. They'll no longer be having more than 2.1 children on average. But surprisingly, and I say this in the book, it's not a doomsday scenario. It's simply something we'll have to adapt to, because the country, there's some good things about declining population, right? Our footprint on the planet, we won't have quite as many environmental challenges. There'll be more interest in taking care of all of us. So there's some good things with that, but we'll need to adapt. And one of the ways that we'll adapt is we're living longer. That nature, we continue to extend life expectancy through medicine and through better practices. And as life expectancy extends, we'll have more productive years. And the interesting thing about nature, when you extend life expectancy, well, in nature, there's this law that says every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right?
Yes.
Well, the opposite reaction is that when you extend life expectancy, every stage of life stretches. Every stage of life gets longer. So what do we observe? Before most people even knew this, we observed that young people are growing up slower. They're not quite as adult as they were when you and I were young, and even our children were young. And so that's sort of a downside that we're going to have to help young people mature faster. But on the other hand, if you think about when most people are at their peak of contribution to the world, not just to themselves, but to them, it's about 45 to age 70 today. Those are great years. That's when you're kind of know who you are. You really want to do something that's meaningful, not just, make a buck. And think about that. That's going to expand too. So now maybe instead of 20 or 25 years of that, we get 40 or 50 years of people in that stage. What could they accomplish? And then if you think about that, they'll be a bigger share of the total world population, they'll have more influence as well.
But how do we prepare for them? How do we prepare them to get to that place and to be ready, right? Mission ready.
You're right. The two most important things is to, first of all, take care of your health, because having extra years, if you're disabled and sick, and that's not good. And so taking care of your health and being attentive to it is the first most important thing. The second is your wealth. If you're going to live longer, you've got to support yourself longer. So it means you're probably going to have to work longer. You're going to need your health to work longer, but also that to learn earlier in life to save. You'll have more years to save, more years to accumulate. So really learning to manage your wealth when you're very, very young And that's a great thing we can teach, our kids and grandkids is, instead of buying them a shiny toy when they're, 10, you buy them a little Fidelity account and you open it up and say, or Vanguard, and you say, every time you get a check or any money, you put 10% right there. And if you do, when you get to be my age, you'll be set in life. And that's one of those great things. I actually tell a story of a lady, the real true story of a lady whose father taught her that. She never made more than $40,000 a year in her entire life. She raised 3 children, put them through college and a master's degree as a single mom, and paid for her house. It's a simple little house, but it's lovely. I've seen it. And her car's paid for, and she's just loving life at 67. And so it can be done. And there's actually a lot of stories if you go out on the internet about that people who've done that. So take care of our health, take care of our wealth, and then really plan to really spend these years that you'll have. Start thinking about, what would I do? What could I do with those that I've always wanted to do? And have a dream, and live for that dream.
And have a dream. Now, you're a futurist, basically, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm a potentialist, first of all. Yes, but definitely.
You're a what? You're a what?
I'm a potentialist, number one.
Okay. Yes, I think that's the name of the book, right? Y'all see here.
Right.
Right. And I meant to say that, right?
Right. Which really looks at life and the future through the lens of potential.
And I see that because I think I see potential in everything and everybody.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, how I'm going to take it to a different level where it becomes where all of our children aren't always able to get the kind of information that you're talking about, their families and whatever, at their level, right? And many of the schools and the administrations for many communities, be it mayor, governor, whatever, they're not creating an environment where their population can grow and expand and contribute, right? And so, we can talk about the potential, right? The potential of everything and everybody. There's a potential. But how do we put and position people to even see their full potential?
Well, here's one of the things, Margie, is that this period we're going through, it's almost like nature saying, grow up. By that, I mean, we're not going to be able to depend on our institutions like we have in the past. It's going to be more up to us. So how do we make sure that the people who don't live in a good state or city that's very supportive of them, rising up and doing their best and achieving, that's where we make darn sure they've got one of these or its successors, which will be even cheaper and better, and they have access to the cloud. And then we provide them the ability that they can develop their own potential and self-educate with their parents and never have to depend on those institutions. And I believe that's absolutely possible. And I believe it's not only possible, it's going to happen.
Okay, so I'm going to just get to the micro level, right? Right. So when we talk about the micro level, and I'm going to speak to underserved communities, because the folks that already own homes and have big bank accounts and all that, they already know basically how to do what you're talking about. But the people who are in environments that are underserved, how do we create an environment for them to, one, even afford a smartphone that has access to the internet?
You're thinking today. I'm
thinking today, but I'm not, because I'm saying in 2022, we've been looking at poverty and underserved communities for my lifetime, and I'm 70.
Right.
Okay. All right. So from 1952 to
but
20.
Remember what I said?
But wait a minute. Let me finish.
Right,
let me see. You just wait, man.
All right.
So from 20. Hold on. Just hold
Right.
So from 1952, and I'm going to just use me as an example, to 2022, I have not seen underserved communities being served. Okay. And I pay attention to that. That's my part of my life's work. Right. And so in
As it
looking
is
at,
mine.
all right. So from a micro level, we're looking at people who don't have the access to do most things.
But Marcia, it's really important. We may not agree, but it's important you understand what I'm saying. You can't, we will never get there waiting for politicians and
I'm not even talking about
no,
politicians.
wait. Hear me out.
All right.
What we have to do, first of all, you're assuming that it's going to cost $1,300.
I'm not assuming anything.
And
you won't let me.
Go beyond your experience here in the United States. Let's take something more extreme. Because that's where I think we have to focus the goal. If we do that, then it'll serve everybody else. Imagine an Aboriginal tribal member.
Yes.
In the middle of the rainforest in Brazil. Imagine how we can educate that person or give that person an opportunity. How would you do that? Well, here's how. First of all, you'd make sure that what they need to access the cloud and all of the things that live there, including self-development and self-learning, is driven by their own language. They don't need to know anything. And you go, well, that's impossible. No, it's not. Remember, Steve Jobs invented something that requires no training to use. You figure it out on your own. Most 3-year-olds can figure it out. So now take it forward 10 years, 20 years, and now all I'll need to do is speak it. So the United Nations maybe gives me a thing I clip on my ear that costs $5. And I say, well, and it says, well, hello, Eduardo, in his language, what would you like to learn? Well,
they have that now.
I'd like to learn to speak English. Okay, well, what did we have to do? We had to get that device down to where it's a price we can make sure everybody in the world has one. And we make sure that we can get Wi-Fi or the equivalent of high-speed internet to them. And we have the software that they can self-develop. Now you've cracked the code. You don't need anybody to help you. You can do it on your own. That's the goal. That's what I'm talking about.
And I understand the mission. I hear you. I understand the mission. I'm not lost, or it's not lost on me. Okay, I need you to acknowledge that.
It's not an easy concept to visualize given where we are today.
That's all right. That's all right. I saw things that I didn't know was going to come years ago, from South Bend, Indiana to my journey, right? That's another conversation. So, but where I am right now is, if I look at 10 years from now, somebody who is in the kindergarten or first grade, they're 7 or 8, they're going to be 17 or whatever in the next 10 years. How do we as community leaders, let's not talk about what our expectations are of our politicians, right? Let's talk about, from a community standpoint, how do we move that? How do we move that and deploy that information, the information?
Right. You help
right?
Make sure this system I just talked about gets built, because what I just described it can be built today.
And who pays for it?
I don't think first of all, I don't think it'll cost that much money. And who will pay for it will be the higher education institutions, because they're losing students. They got to find students beyond their current population. And they can't just use distance learning, because distance learning doesn't work for everybody. So it's got to be something different. And so they're going to be highly motivated to do that. Employers are going to be highly motivated to do it, because they're going to need the employees as there are fewer available. And so the motivation is going to be there. So I think all the people have to do is keep your eyes open, call for this kind of thing to happen. If you see it sooner, you'll soon start to hear about it. I think within the next 5 years, you'll start hearing systems like this popping up. And I think when that happens, jump on it. If you're a parent or a grandparent, say, I want to do it.
We say jump on it. Well, Jason Spates just left something. One of my friends says, let's see, he is talking about Apple invites families to create. It's a apple.com newsroom. And they invite families to create and learn. I don't know if you can see the chat over there.
Yeah, I do. It's great.
And learn together during Apple Comp, whatever that means. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah,
and
that's great. Apple,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's number one. But also we've got, and this is really interesting. So be more truthful. Nia says, what will occur that will cause the haves to share info and opportunities to isolated communities to participate?
Because they need them. They need them to be consumers, and they need them to be workers, employees, subcontractors, suppliers. Because in a declining population, again, you're going to need everyone to prosper. Because and that's something that's never existed. We've never had this before. And the only parallel we have in history that I'm aware of, there may be others, but the only one I'm aware of was in the bubonic plague in the 1400s. You know, half of Europe was wiped out in 5 years. And it was a horrible thing. I mean, you'd never want to ever see that happen ever again. But what happened was for the first time in history, workers, the well-being of work for many, many years improved a lot. And we came out of that period, came out of the Renaissance with the guilds, which were basically, you know, the skilled unions of these guilds. They were the most powerful people other than the nobility. And that all resulted from the fact there was a shortage of people. And suddenly you had to make sure those people succeeded. And so that's what we're going to have here. We're going to have a period where it's going to be really important for every company, every government, every person to make sure everybody succeeds, because they're going to be consumers and they're going to be critical employees.
You know what I think is really interesting in that, as we look at this and as communities, how do we, one, they need to read your book. So I ask everybody to get the Potentialist and read about this gentleman and Ben's view on the world, which I think is really critical for us to start thinking, because it's like, you know, you need to be doing long range planning. You need to be long range thinking. And, you know, we do it in our job. You know, your job says, okay, well, the long range plan is we need X amount of number of employees. Well, if that's the case, then what's the long range plan to get them prepared to be that next employee, right? And if it's not happening at the government level in your municipalities, then it needs to be done in the individual and organizational level.
It's really individuals, Mara. That's what I'm saying. This is the time. One of the things about democratization is it elevates the individual, and the institutions become less important, not because we wouldn't like them to be more effective, but individuals can change and adapt much faster. Alvin Toffler, 50 years ago, who was a mentor of mine and wrote the original Future Shock, he pointed out that individuals are the smallest unit of change. And so as an individual, you know, some examples, we can overnight say, I'm going to take an Uber instead of a taxi. You know, I'm going to, you know, cable's out, I'm going to streaming. And we decide it like that.
That's right.
Organizations, whether it's a company, small company or not-for-profit, whatever it is, all the way up to the biggest organization, which are government, education, they change very slowly because, first of all, a lot of people have a vested interest in things staying like it is.
It's always been like this.
Right, exactly. And so what happens as change accelerates, they get less and less relevant to our lives. We start going, what are they thinking? Why aren't they doing anything about this? And the perfect example is this thing about, you know, a declining population. It's been known for over 20 years. But I can't find one. I know I didn't. I never heard one government leader, no governor, president, senator, anybody say, you know what, we got this issue coming. We're going to have fewer people. We got declining population, and that's going to cause worker shortages and blah, blah, blah. Nobody ever said that. No member of the media said it. They simply missed it. They were focusing on other things. There was a great book published in 2004 explained exactly what's going to happen right now. I'd highly recommend it to anybody. It's called Fewer, Fewer. The author's passed away. It was a fellow named Ben Wattenberg, but it's really, really accurate. So but it's for all of us. What it means is right. What you're saying, Marsha. We have to pay attention. Nobody's looking out for us.
Right.
We got to pay attention.
And how do we? Because it's almost like they're community organizations, and we have a lot of folks who've been doing the watch of government and things. You know, we've got a lot of people that are already doing that, right? They're already paying attention to what's going on. How do we insert ourselves into some of the work that they're doing, or at least look at the work that they're doing and see how we can be supportive, and to think about how we can bring it into our circle of influence?
Well, I think one of the things is that, remember, what causes us to struggle with change is we lose our perspective. You and I talked about bird's eye view. We have to rise up from what we hear on the news. We have to rise up from and we have to stand back. So what's going on? Where are we headed? Am I doing what I did? I sat down one day and said, am I doing the right things to be ready myself? And is my family ready? I started with my family. It's okay. That's where you ought to start. And I said, no, we're not able. So I have to help. I have to figure out a way. Every person can do that. I'm just a regular person. So everybody can do that. You know, I think that would be a great way, is to start paying attention, and then to tell people, let's get together and talk about this. Let's talk about it. What can we do to help our young people be ready for what's coming? And one thing everybody can do, is absolutely the most important thing, is fear. Today is to look at the future, not fearfully, but pragmatically optimistic, because fear will cause you to make bad decisions every time. Yes. And pessimism will cause you to not see opportunity right in front of you. Well, that's right. And you know, that's who influences young people about the future. They listen to us. They listen to their grandparents. Well, if all we're doing is sitting around talking about, oh, it's going to be horrible, and a lot of times that's just a reflex. It's not critically thought out.
But it's not a call to action either.
Right. No, that's exactly right. So that's something every single one of us can do, is if we talk a lot of negative about the future, just stop. Even if we feel it, keep it to ourselves. And when you're with young people, say, you know, we'll get through this. Human race has been around a long time. And even though it doesn't look like it, this is the best time to live in human history. It's the best time by far.
Really?
We're not killing. I mean, you got to remember the 20th century, always before, about every 20 or 30 years, we ran a bunch of 19-year-olds out on the battlefield and we slaughtered them. We're not doing that.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
We do more for people today than ever in the past. Is it enough yet? No, but compared to the past, we forget 120 years ago, people used to take their children to public executions. Well, first of all, we don't have public executions. We don't hardly have any more at all. We sure as heck would never take a child to one. That was common practice. And so we have to remember this is the best time in history. Now let's make it better. But it's nothing compared to what it can be.
But here's the thing that's very sick, though, that you just said. We're still seeing that we may not see the public executions, but we still are incarcerating people for extraordinary, unnecessarily lengths of time, and and murdering them sitting in those chairs for some who haven't even been found guilty, who were found guilty but hadn't even been able to afford
And
to
it's
get out
not
of
a
there.
perfect world, but that's a good example. That's a great
And
thing.
those numbers are outrageously high.
And that's something for some young people to say, that's
Mhm,
going to be my chair. That's what I'm going to devote my life to, is trying to see that we build a more equitable system there.
mhm.
That would be great. And that's how we're going to do it. So whatever someone's passion is like that, take it on, you know?
And that's what we need. The passion needs to be deployed,
Right.
right?
Right.
The passion needs to be deployed. Ben, I know we got a couple of minutes left. Give us some parting words. I'm just so tickled that you joined us today. And this has been a
Well,
very
it's
interesting
fun.
conversation. You got to come back with your next book or the next chapter because we got more to talk about.
Well, I'll be happy to. It's great fun being with you. You're fun to talk to. No, I think the thing that I would this is part of being a potentialist, is you
Yes.
believe that the best years of humanity are in front of us and not behind us. And I think, all of us have to, we have to land on where we each are. But I believe if you look at the arc of history, we have come through a lot for 3 million years. I don't think we're done yet. I think the future is bright. We have to seize it, but it's bright. And let's get our children and our grandchildren fired up about that and what they can do. And like you said, pick something you want to solve. Pick that problem. Pick the problem of incarcerations, and that could be a great thing. Pick a problem of solar conversion of seawater, whatever it is, and become passionate about it and make a better world. And let's help them do it.
Yeah, because the world can be a better place, but we've got to do something to make that happen.
Right. And so it's
Right.
act, move.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
That's I'm doing it. I could be doing something else. I'm doing this because I believe it's important to try.
I know. Well, and I appreciate your passion. The Potentialist, Ben LYTLE. Thank you so much, sir. And you do have to come back again because I like you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I like you too, Marcia. I'd love to spend more time with you.
All right, we'll do that.
All right.
Take
Good night.
care.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We've had a full house of activities since 5 o'clock. So thank you all for being with us. Thanks for hanging out with us. Please join us next week. We have more great guests. And you know what we do. We keep it moving with Marcia Jews. Thank you for joining the show tonight. Thank you, Katanya Lester. See you next Tuesday. I'm Marcia Jews.
Dream of a land my soul is from. I heard a hand struck on a drum. Shades of delight, go, go, hue, rich as the night, Afro blue.